We've been in lockdown for about, let me think, probably about 3 weeks. I went to Canada
Okay.
for, like, it was supposed to be like a 6-month trip,
Hmm.
and I had to come back after 6 days, which was a shame.
Okay. Oh wow. So that kind of
Yeah,
threw your trip into the bin, I guess.
yeah. But I don't know, like I've kept busy and
That's good.
just crack on with life. What about yourself?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, it was a bit like I was actually I took 2 trips to Spain to document, and then that was at the very beginning of the breakout. So that wasn't too bad. And then I came back to Sweden, and then I took one more trip 2 weeks later. And this
Yeah,
one, when the virus was getting a little bit higher, but Spain wasn't too affected by then. But by the time I left the country, I think it was like a day or two before, the numbers just exploded.
mm.
So I actually got really lucky. I got back to Sweden before they closed the borders and everything like that.
Yeah, that would have been a big nightmare. Because where are you from originally?
Well, I'm from France, but I live in Sweden. So
Mm. What would
the
have
issue,
happened then?
they would have probably either I would have got stranded in Spain for a little while, or they would have probably sent me to France.
Mm.
But or I could have tried to get back to Sweden because by that time Sweden didn't close its borders. It's just that countries around it closed their borders. So
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to know, isn't it?
yeah,
It's hard to know like what would have been the best outcome because it's never happened before. So
right.
you can't
No,
really
no,
plan.
no,
Um, like that's why we just came back because I was
right,
thinking, shall I tough it out in Canada for a bit? But
right.
I just thought don't want to be stuck in a different country that I don't really know
Well,
yet.
and if something happens to you, like let's say you actually catch the disease, then in terms of bureaucracy and healthcare, it becomes really messy.
Mm, yeah,
So
yeah,
you don't want
definitely.
you
Well,
don't want to
no,
be. What's that?
I'm a Canadian citizen.
Oh, you are.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
so I would have had that, but even though I am a citizen, I still didn't know,
Right.
know the country very well in terms of like what I would do, who I'd go and see. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't have like a almost like a safety net around me of
Right.
people.
Right.
Because I think a lot of the time, like you need that, like just for your own mind, know that this person's there or that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You don't want to end up in the hospital by yourself.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I didn't have any work yet. I didn't have anywhere to live. Like I was in an Airbnb at the time.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it was all just against me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's against everyone. So and
Yeah.
then when we came back, we started doing this project straight away.
Okay.
And I talked to, I think you're like maybe the 14th or 15th
Oh,
person
wow. That's
spoken
great.
to. So I've been doing like 2 a day sometimes, and that's just
Yeah.
been really interesting,
Yeah.
keeping me busy.
I mean
Like,
that. Yeah. I
well,
think. I think that's one of the challenges. I think that's what's interesting about this whole lockdown, because it kind of challenges us to in a way trying to find creative solutions.
mm,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. Like we were thinking basically the idea behind this was we like to feature and talk to and do podcasts with all these people,
Mhm.
including yourself. Like you've featured on our website before, and we were thinking how can we work with the new constraints and still
Right.
stuff. And this is actually a lot easier than before
Right.
because for one, getting a hold of people, you just say, give me half an hour, 45 minutes of your day, and
Yeah.
people generally like, okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And then you just put some titles together for the thing, and bam, you've got a bit of content.
That's great.
Whereas before, like when me and you did that thing, you have to send me this, I have to send you back, I have to
Right.
get photos, I have to do this, and
Yeah.
that's and we thankfully know you through Duncan, so that process was a bit easier of getting to know you. Whereas a
Right.
lot
Right.
of people, you have to get to know them and introduce yourself and all
Right.
that sort of thing. So yeah, I've just been really busy since, and yeah, I've been trying to keep active as well. Like we're lucky, we live kind of by the woods and the countryside, so I've been running around the woods,
Oh,
not
that's
near anyone.
wonderful. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's that's perfect.
like, can you go out much?
So this is the situation in Sweden. They actually haven't put in any laws or restricted anyone to go out, which is very interesting actually. It's kind of like the philosophy of the country. They'll never force anything onto people.
Yeah,
So, but there are recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, most people, I'm not saying everybody for sure, but most people will be quite reasonable. So, of course, the numbers are still going up. I think we're like up to 8,000 people that are affected so far. And I think yesterday I looked at the numbers and there were 500 people that were newly affected just for the day. But then it's in very specific areas also. It's mostly in Stockholm because obviously it's the biggest city, and it's also people have traveled to Italy when they broke out because they were skiing over there, and then they came back with a disease.
Yeah.
So, but in terms of, actually, it's really funny. I don't have any restriction. I could pretty much do whatever I want if I wanted to. I am a bit in the risk group because I do have a heart condition, so I have to be a little bit more mindful. Just because if I get a high fever, it could trigger some arrhythmia or something like this.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I've been kind of in quarantine since I got back from Spain, which is like almost a month now. But like it's like you, I have the forest right out my window. I'm lucky to live in a neighborhood where it's. What's so great about Gothenburg is actually a city within nature. So I have a lot of woods here, and 15-20 minute bus ride from the center, but it doesn't feel like it because there's a lake, so I can walk my dog and there's no problem at all.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I think I just feel, I've said it like so many times to different people, you just feel sorry for people that are stuck in small flats in a city, like imagine being in the center of London in a small flat.
Oh, that's awful.
That'd be a nightmare.
Right.
And I was thinking as well, in those, I mean, actually, the last time we saw each other was in the center of London, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was in Trafalgar Square.
Yeah, definitely.
It was actually really interesting. When I came back, I got one day's work for a company, and I basically had to drive in a van and pick up stock from some of their shops so they could sell it online. And all their shops are around central London, and I had to drive through Trafalgar Square and stuff. And you would not believe how empty it is. It was honestly like shocking.
Wow.
And Covent Garden and all those places which you just associate with being rammed like constantly. And that was the last time I was at Trafalgar Square was when I was with you and Duncan, and it was just a scene of like
extreme. Extreme opposite.
Yeah, which was really bizarre. I mean, how are you still like involved with Animal Rebellion, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm involved in the whole animal rights community. I mean, I guess you've seen my recent content, which is I've kind of went from human rights to animal rights. And so basically now I am involved with many different activists. I've been following many different activists. Actually doing a lot of farm investigations, which is what I was in Spain for. I was following two animal rights activists. And I've been documenting inside farms and the work they do. So yeah, that's pretty much ongoing. And I had a lot of plans, but pretty much everything got thrown out the window since the virus. So and it's a little bit hard as a photographer because I'm always up to like every time there's an opportunity, I'm just kind of up and go and trying to document.
You got to be kind of like reactive to it, like quite responsive. Are there people that are like, I suppose, what can you take photos of? Like, are there any photographers is there any people that are jumping on certain things to do with this virus? I mean, I don't know.
I've seen a couple content here and there where people actually went into the streets and kind of documented like the everyday life around different areas. So it could be anything from people wearing masks to empty streets to anything like this. So that could be quite an interesting content, but then you have to take the risk yourself of going out also.
Yeah. And being that person that's like, I've seen people heavily criticized on social media and stuff for going out and about. And if you're trying to release content and everyone's just criticizing you and you're not going to do that well with the content, I don't think, at the same time.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because there were a group of activists here that wanted to do a march relating to the disease with animals, the contact that we have with animals, and they wanted to do a march. And I thought, okay, yeah, maybe that's going to be good to go there and maybe document the march and stuff like that. And they've tried to do it twice, but even the people in the animal rights community, they didn't want to be perceived. They don't want to have any negative feedback. So they've actually canceled the march just for that reason. So yeah, it becomes
we were the same. Like me, Tom, who I do most of my work with, and Duncan were brainstorming, kind of like as content creators, we were like, oh, we need to jump on this. Sounds kind of like it's a bit savage and silly when you say it like that. We need to get on this, and
right.
but you know the way it is, and although first thing we were like, oh, it'd be nice to give an outlet to older people and see how we can get people talking to them. But every idea involved, one, leaving your house, which is everyone's no, and two, being in contact with old people. So straight away we were like, we cannot do that. Yeah, we cannot do that in any way.
Right. I think the smart way to go now is basically be online. I think we were brainstorming also, like with different people I'm involved in, and basically the community said, let's just do an online action. And actually it's funny, you just talked about Animal Rebellion, and right before you called me, I just got this email I'm going to read it to you, and it's actually from Animal Rebellion, and they've been doing a lot of online activism. So this is an example. Apparently, they're having a meeting. The UK government is having a meeting today to try to bail out dairy because dairy is in a huge deficit. So Animal Rebellion called in a main action at 5 o'clock today, and go on one of the Prime Minister's Facebook page and basically like message him to not bail out dairy. So these are like the kind of actions that people are taking now.
Yeah, well, that actually makes sense. Like food production's obviously been affected massively, and that is something that's a huge topic for the human rights, not human rights, animal rights activists.
Yeah. So
I hadn't even thought about that at all. That's why I wanted to talk to you, because there's all this stuff going on still.
Yeah, so it's very interesting time. It's and I never made that link either. Like even with animal rights, I never thought about the food industry and the potential diseases and this whole thing with China. I started making research about it, and one of the projects I started doing now, which was a small project, just me and a couple others, and this has nothing to do with photography, but we saw a lot of ads in town that is actually put up from main corporations, like industrial dairy corporations in France and here. And we just thought about creating a poster, not only talking about the process of the dairy industry, but actually how it relates to also zoonotic diseases and a lot of history that broke out since a few hundred years back. And actually there's a correlation to all this. So it was, for me, I never thought about it from that angle. So I learned a lot through that also. And I've looked into different diseases, things like the Spanish flu, the swine flu, the bird flu. And I learned a lot, and it kind of made me connect the dots a little bit more. And I thought, oh, wow, we should really talk about this because it is an issue. And I mean, whether or not, whatever standpoint you're on, whether you want to, you think eating animals is right, is morally right or wrong, I think one different concerns that we have as consumers is we definitely have to look at the way that we're breeding these animals and the facilities that we're putting them in. And one of the main factors that no one disagrees with is the human contact with these animals in such facilities. So, we criticize, that's what I wrote to you in those questions. We criticize China a lot, but actually we should look at ourselves too, because we're not doing any better. We just feed them a lot more antibiotics, and we just prevent these diseases by happening, by feeding them a lot of medicine. But we're not far from an outbreak, and there's been outbreaks. So
yeah, there's been a number of them. I think people are a bit apathetic towards this one. Probably because the past ones haven't had such a large impact. Personally, I remember being at work and saying to a coworker that was worried about it, like, you're not going to get it. This is like before. Yeah. And I think obviously many people felt the same thing, like, because even things with like Ebola and stuff, you heard about it in the news, everyone got scared, and then it just went away. These things just go away. Right. Not in the countries that the outbreaks are in, but for like people in the UK and in the West, they just go away. And I foolishly had that standpoint. And yeah, we've all all had that big shock, and I think it's going to change the world. It will definitely be one of those landmark, like one of
Mhm.
those pinpoints in history where you can
Yeah,
say, like this,
yeah,
the world wars, this, that, 9/11. This will be definitely a big one where it's like this
yeah,
changed a lot.
yeah. Yeah, and I just hope that we can learn a little bit from it. I mean, of course, ideally, I would like things to change radically and try to do major reforms. And obviously, that's not going to happen. But I think the interesting part is maybe we start to feel like we have a sense of responsibility as consumers, and of course we can't always implement that fully, but being a little bit more conscious and more than anything, be curious, try to find out like where the problem comes from, and trying to look into it a little bit more, and people can learn a little bit more about this.
Yeah.
So
I,
that's that's one of the positive things, I think. I think definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Like we were talking, I've talked to everyone. Like one question I think I sent to you is what positives can be
Mhm.
taken from this. Give me 1 minute.
Yeah,
I'm going to move again because
sure.
I'm in someone's way. It's not going
Okay.
well.
Yeah,
I feel
no
like
worries.
constantly in the wrong place today. Um,
Luckily, I have my own office, so I can just be here and not move.
yeah, no, in my house, like we've sort of found that like you get in each other's way, don't you? Eventually, in a
Yeah,
house, the
yeah,
same four people constantly. And let me move that. Oh, yeah, I thought I'd go outside today because it was nice, and I did think the Wi-Fi might be an issue, but it's all right.
yeah.
You chop it up, don't you? You edit it; it'll be seamless. Yeah, I really appreciate actually when I sent you those questions that you answered them. Actually, I didn't. I was just sending them to you to be like, oh, here's some questions that I might talk about,
Yeah,
and like
yeah,
it gave me good insight with other people because that's what I sort of sent a lot of people to prepare them, and you sent me all
right.
these answers back, and I was like, whoa, okay,
Yeah, you
good,
can expect that. Yeah,
and
yeah.
it helped me think about what I wanted to speak to other people about
Mm.
because we've had some really interesting. A couple ago, we had a Buddhist monk
Oh, wow.
speak to us,
Okay.
which was like I could have never imagined that would happen. I just sort of
Right, right.
knew someone whose brother was a Buddhist monk.
Yeah,
Who would have
yeah,
thought?
yeah.
And he was really big on, um, you know, obviously within Buddhism, there's a lot of reflection. He
Sure.
talked to us a lot about our expectations
Yeah,
and why we work and stuff. And
right.
he emphasized the point that we just spoke about, that this is a moment that can be positive because we can all rethink
Hmm. I think
what we're
so.
doing, how we're living, and not on a not even always on a level of what we speak about in terms of industries,
Mm.
changing just
Mm.
personally. And he had some reservation because he said, people will have to be brutally honest,
Right,
and
right. Definitely.
like you have to really dig deep and
Hmm.
be honest of all that's wrong in your
Right,
life and all that's
right.
wrong with the world, because we have a tendency to like be comfortable. We're all at home now, aren't we?
Sure.
So what can you do at home? You can lie in bed, you can watch Netflix, you can eat chocolate, you can, there's two ways. It's
Yeah,
not going to be everyone like, oh, let's change because this has happened. A lot of people will be in their bunker, sort of.
right. Definitely, definitely. Um, yeah, and it's interesting you say that too, because yesterday actually I did go out and I put up more of these ads that I've been doing, and I walked by and I was about to put up an ad to cover one of the big dairy companies, try to spam it a little bit, and I can show you the poster actually. It's interesting, and there was this scene. There was like this really hip cafe, and everybody was hanging out like next to each other. And I just thought, wow, this is like so surreal. Like, because in Sweden there's no law enforcement. I said, look at this. Like, people are actually like doing it. Like, nothing's happening. But then I thought later on, like, I talked to my girlfriend about it, and she's like, well, these people are probably people from the neighborhood, and they've probably been inside doing office work, and they've probably been really bored. And in Sweden, it's been sunny the whole week, and it's really rare here when it's sunny. And so people have been they just probably went out of their home to interact with each other. And so that was kind of an interesting thing to reflect upon, because okay, this is a little bit of a bigger topic, but in Sweden you have a lot of social distancing within the culture already, which is part of the reason why they haven't implemented those laws about staying at home in quarantine, because people are already have social distance within their behaviors. And but yeah, there was, I thought I was in Italy for a second, and I've never seen that before. So it made me reflect that how much dependent we are on social interactions, much more than we think we are. And you don't really reflect that in your everyday life because you're busy, you're interacting, you're going to places, but you don't really realize how much we depend on each other. And for me, that was kind of a really interesting point to reflect over, because then we realized at this point we really are vulnerable at any point, and all of us rely on each other to be well. And sometime in our society, we have this sensation that we're all individuals and we all have our responsibilities on our own. But then there's this bigger picture that we're also responsible for one another, and we're also responsible for other things that we do. Unconsciously, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, I don't know how you feel. Like, as someone, I assume, for example, when you're taking your photos or you're doing some research and you're in your office all day,
Yeah,
a really nice thing will be to go out and see people and get away from just being with that work
yeah,
and that.
definitely.
And I think that's something we didn't appreciate before, because you just went, a
Yeah.
change of scenery. But now we're like, wow, because I do all day on my laptop, contacting people, making these videos, doing everything. And after I finish, I'm just like, I just crave
Yeah,
someone
yeah,
or like something.
yeah, 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 definitely. Yeah, and you know, yesterday I went to see a friend because he lived right around the corner, and I just took the risk and I went to see him. But and it's interesting that we still have that urge no matter what, and we know the risk, and we'll still crave that contact no matter what. So it's really challenging at this point, for sure.
Yeah, so challenging. Like, I'm naturally like I'm quite happy to keep to myself and work on projects, compared to a lot of people. But we've all found it hard. Like, the guy that I do majority of my projects with, Tom, he's also my best friend, and he lives
Yeah.
5 minutes away.
Okay.
And I told this story a few times. We saw each other once because he needed some stuff from me, and we
Oh
did
yeah.
it like in a film where we put the bag in the middle, and then
Yeah.
we back up like that, and then
Oh really?
he comes and picks up the bag and sort of like
Uh,
scuttled off and ran off.
oh,
And
hilarious.
I haven't seen Duncan either. We've talked on Skype a few times. Like, we were hanging out, and like before this all happened, and he even came to the airport to see me off, and it was like, bye, like, see you whenever, like, I don't know, like this emotional goodbye.
Oh right, right,
He
okay.
took my photo at Heathrow, and we were like, oh, this is and then, like, now I'm just back. It's so
Okay.
weird.
Yeah,
We're just
yeah,
back, like it never
yeah.
happened.
Right.
um,
Yeah.
I mean, that I assume that project he was working on is now sort of stopped in its tracks, and I know a lot of other people whose projects are just, done. Were you quite like involved in a certain project that you've now had to just like?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was gonna, I'm doing this kind of been doing this full time on like documenting inside farms. And after coming back from Spain, we had other projects that we planned here in Sweden, and it was going to be Easter, so we were going to try to. Can't really talk about it because it's also privacy things in terms of, because it does require certain types of illegal actions. So for security, I can't really talk about it too much, but we were going to plan to find an egg farm and expose it to the public. And all that had to be in. This requires a lot of preparation for it. But we had to put it on hold because this would be really badly perceived from the public if we go into these farms. And we even had a TV crew going to film us,
Oh, really?
but even that had to be pulled on hold. So yeah, everything right now is up in the air, and you don't really know. I don't really know when this is going to end or not. So it's. I think the frustrating part is also not knowing and not being able to plan in advance. So right now it's just kind of like living day by day, and trying to find a balance between still being active and not like oversleeping and becoming sloppy. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, so sloppy. Like I've gone to waking up at like 10,
Yeah,
11,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, because I do have stuff to do, but like
yeah,
normally I have to work all my other work around
yeah,
either a 9 to 5 job or something like that. You
yeah,
know, time was of the essence before this, you
yeah.
know, very tight margins.
Mm,
And now I've still got stuff to do, but I've got massive chunks. You know, that huge chunk of the day, the
yeah,
working day, is
yeah,
now
yeah.
doesn't exist. It's
Right.
extended, it's shortened, it's
Yeah,
here, it's there.
yeah.
Do you work from home? So like yeah, it's hard to not keep sloppy. Like we had a personal trainer, we spoke to a personal trainer on here, and they that was a concern for them. They
Mm,
were thinking, you know, all their clients and
mm,
everyone,
mm,
just
mm,
like,
mm.
what are you going to do? How do you keep structure like this?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think for me it's a little bit more stressful because I'm used to being active and going out, and I want I mean ultimately I want justice, you know, I want justice for animals and I want justice for humans, and unfortunately I posted a few things on my Instagram about refugees and animals in these situations. And in terms of refugees, I mean, if you've seen Italy, it's really bad because they're all stuck there, and now it's even worse with the coronavirus.
Do you have any updates on that? Like,
Yeah, I've
obviously we documented that a lot, and yeah, I'd like to hear a bit more.
I mean, I've read a few articles here and there because I posted some of the images I've taken a couple years back, and they've actually the numbers have been dropped from coming to the sea, but they've actually tried to stop also the numbers from coming. And then when people arrive at the boat, they all try to put them in quarantine because they don't know if they're affected or not. Um, but one of the main projects I've been helping a family in the Gambia for a few years now. And do you know where the Gambia is?
No, no, I couldn't put it on a map,
Yeah,
I'm
it's like
afraid.
you know Senegal. It's like the
Yeah,
French. So it's basically it's a British colony. There was the French and British colony that kind of were fighting around these territories, and the French got the Senegal country, and then the British got the Gambia. So the Gambia is actually a country within the middle of Senegal, and they had. So I've been in touch with my friend who I've been helping and documenting his life there in the small village, and I try to send him money every month, and we're trying to build him a house. He's a teacher for kids over there, and he actually they just closed down the borders because they had 4 people affected just in the country. But because they don't have any infrastructure and they're so poor and they don't have any resources, they can't take the chance. And on top of that, they don't have much imports already because they're stuck in the middle of another country. So it's really hard for them to get imports, and also because of their weather condition is also quite hard, and they don't have any exports in exchange, so they're already in deficit, and now they're shutting the borders for 45 days, which means that they're not going to get much food at all for these 45 days, and which means that they have to go get food right now to survive. But the problem is that they're so poor that they live on day to day. Sometimes they don't even have money to buy rice. So
mm.
I had to like make a donation call, and thankfully I just got 200. I collected 200 euros, so I just sent him the 200 euros through one of those websites like Small World, where they wire the money, and it just
Well, if
arrived.
you send it to me, we can isolate this and we can repost it and see
Yeah,
if
sure.
anyone. Yeah, because that sounds like a good idea. Because yeah, I have no idea about that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
there's a lot of stories that people don't hear about. So
yeah,
we'll get that reposted, I think.
yeah. That's a great one, and I mean that's a great one. Just him to know that they're also in that situation, but much worse than we are, because
Mhm.
I mean now we're talking about food and water. That's not even accessible
What
to them.
what's panic buying? Is there any panic buying in Sweden?
Toilet paper.
Yeah, have you seen like in the UK, like it's got people going a bit
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
Um, like they to get into a supermarket now, it's like getting into a nightclub. It's all
yeah,
like barriers, and you have
uh,
to go and wait and get let in, and
yeah.
one in, one out, and
Yeah, they don't do that in Sweden, and Sweden is super liberal being here. I mean, you wouldn't even think that the disease is around because it's just there's no restrictions at all. which is really surreal, and it creates a bit of a confusion in my head too, because I'm supposed to be in quarantine. I know that I'm a risk, but yet nothing is being implemented on me. So when I'm walking around, I get really confused. I'm like, well, people are doing their things. Like, is it really that bad?
That was the thing about me and Canada. You know, I had this trip planned, and it was being cancelled. But me myself, I was still healthy and happy as ever. You know what I mean? It's a weird, like, normally with those things, you know, you break a leg or you get an illness or a relative dies, and you can at least go, oh, okay, these things happen.
Yeah.
But this one, it's like, I'm fine.
Exactly. And I think it creates a bit of inner conflict, because you want to keep going with your own life and your own plan, and you feel like, since I'm healthy and there's no restrictions, I could do that. But sometime in the back of my mind, I know I can't do that. So it just creates this weird tension where you don't really know what's the best approach. And so either
Are there a lot of cases in Sweden?
And I think up to 8,000 right now, as I was saying earlier, almost. Yeah. So we're about 10 million. So it's not even 1% yet, but it's growing. It's growing, and people are getting infected every day. So, and I have taken some risk myself going out. I have, because I just went, like yesterday, I just went out all day. I'm be careful when I'm out, but still.
Yeah, I was debating whether to get a job, because the British government and stuff are calling for people to work on farms in terms of picking fruit and veg and stuff like that. But I saved up loads of money to go traveling, so I'm fine. And I was just thinking, is it worth it? You know, I'm here with my parents; they're older. Is it worth doing that and maybe getting infected? Although saying that, my brother's a police officer, and he's having to go out and into the community every day, and he's living here as well. So I kind of think he's going to give it to us.
Oh yeah.
I think, yeah, like the police. It's funny. I saw an article. It was like there was like in Manchester there was like 500 parties shut down over the past like week or so. Like it's crazy. People are having parties.
Yeah,
I know we're all off work, but like I don't know. It's kind of, although you think back to when I was at university and you're young, like when you're 18 and you're just an idiot and you're living away from home.
Yeah,
it's easy to get tempted into those things.
Definitely. I had a friend actually that messaged me today. It's like, we're gonna have a barbecue. You want to come? But it's gonna be like social distancing. Everybody's gonna be 2 meters from each other. And I was quite tempted, but in the end, I was like, nah, don't do that. You know.
Yeah. So. With the animal rights stuff that you've been documenting, Duncan told me a story, and I don't know if you want to tell it or not. But it involves a pig.
Yeah. I'm quite open about it.
Yeah, it made me sort of laugh at the time. That probably was the intention, to make people laugh. But like, you like got a pig or something like.
You mean in terms of what, rescue a pig, or?
You rescued a pig, yeah. And there was like police and like.
Well, I mean, that was a while ago. We had a piglet, but that was actually quite a heartbreaking story, because you know how these mother pigs are kept in farrowing crates.
Yeah.
So when they give birth, up to 5 to 6 weeks, and they can't move. And when they have these, and actually it's quite paradoxical, because it's meant to save the babies. One of them, when they roll over, sometimes they crush the babies, but then they have inner bleedings. So I had like the animal, two people I work with, they rescued one of the piglets that morning, because they knew that they was gonna die, but they just didn't want the piglet to die there at the facility. So they thought they could take it with them and try to actually rescue and feed, but it died a few hours. I don't know if that's the story you're referring to, or was there another story?
I don't know. He just said to me, like Clement rescued a pig, and I just had an image of, like, it made me quite happy. It was like a good, like, it wasn't a heartbreaking story. I don't know if Duncan told it wrong.
I know what I know what he's referring to. He's referring to the action that we've taken in Ireland.
Oh, it was in Ireland. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
it was in Ireland. Okay, yeah, I forgot about that one. That was another one. So we had it was through this movement called Meet the Victims. I don't know if you heard of it.
no.
It's a worldwide movement where people go inside farms and they hold to farms and they demand to rescue an animal, or they demand some kind of compromise like that with the farmers, and the police come. And actually, that was quite of an interesting, beautiful experience, because this farm was so bad. It was just so horrible. When we walked into the door, there were dead pigs everywhere, just like bleeding, their throat open. I've got pictures of it on my Instagram. There was this corridor, so you had to walk over bodies, and then you walked in, and it was just, I don't know, there must have been like thousands of pigs and hundreds in just small, cages, and everything was rotting in there. There was mold everywhere. There was so much condensed. I was trying to take pictures. My lens was fogging, so I had to constantly wipe it, and it smelled so bad. And we stayed there for a few hours, and finally the farmer came, and he called the police. The police came, and actually, when the police came, they were so thrown off by the condition of the place. And this was basically red tractor approved and RSPCA approved as well. But we were able to negotiate a rescue, and the reason for that is because the police officers were really touched. They couldn't believe that places that it was so bad. And when finally, like, okay, you can take a pig with you, and when we couldn't decide because a lot of pigs look the same, actually the police officer pointed to one, and there was one pig, and his name is Connor. We rescued him. He has brown patches around his eyes. So the police officer chose the pig. But then when we walked out, what happened was that we didn't have actually proper transportation, because we didn't think that we were going to be able to do it. So we actually put him in the back of just a small red car in the back seat. And legally, apparently, the police officers got in trouble for that, because you're not allowed to get a pig into a car like this. You have to have proper transport.
Yeah.
So actually, the police officers, but they probably didn't know. They probably didn't check. So the person who organized this action has a lawyer, and it's been doing really well. Got a lot of attention in the media, and she's trying to back up the police officers as well. But it was really moving, because even the police started to cry.
Oh wow! Well, that's the thing. Like you say, the state. I mean, some of your photos have been really eye-opening. So I think a lot of people are very ready. Like I'm talking from a point of view as someone that eats meat as well, and I think a lot of people are very willing to not see any of that. To not get, like, I believe in some ways, although I haven't done it. Like, if you feel like you can eat a pig, or you should be able to kill it. You should be able to see all this stuff,
right?
Because that's all part of it. You know what I mean? And you need to make that choice. Whereas a lot of people are very happy to not see any of that. And when you bring up that stuff and show them these photos, they'll be like, no, I don't want to see that. But they'll happy have it on their plate.
Yeah, I think one important thing to mention is so, because these photos seem really extreme, these things are not extreme. Actually, these are quite common scenes, and I always try to explain that to people. And they always think that the animal rights movement or vegans try to always show the most extreme cases. But I can tell you that when I arrived to this farm in Ireland, I was already so tired, because I've been to many farms in Sweden a week before that. So when I arrived, I just knew what was going to happen. And I was like, I walked into the farm, first garbage can full of dead pigs, bodies rotten. And when you see my pictures of that, you would think, oh my God, this is horrible. But this is actually in every single pig farm that I've been to. I'm talking about Ireland, I'm talking about Denmark, I'm talking about Sweden, I'm talking about Spain. These are 4 countries I've been to. It's always the same scene. And this is not just big farms. Sometimes it's just small, local owned family farms. So these ideas that we have still implanted in our brain, where it's just like happy cows running around the meadow, or happy pigs feeding the grass, this doesn't exist. It really doesn't. And so it becomes really kind of eye-opening, and almost you feel like you've been lied to your whole life from this commercial abuse, from this commercial ads that, when we do HPC approved or organic meat. It's really like, as much as a conspiracy, and I hate to say it because I do sound like a conspiracy believer when I say this, but it really isn't. And that's the reality, and that's what I've seen. And I'm not trying to create any kind of like, I became vegan just because I saw what was happening to animals, and I saw this being totally normalized at every single place that I've been to. So for me, it's just an extension of injustice. So I didn't become vegan because I had a belief that animals like are higher than beings, or we should like, no, I just saw an injustice being done on other beings, just like I saw an injustice on with refugees. And for me, it was very similar. We're putting sentient beings that feel pain, that have a conscious subjective experience of the world around them and of themselves, and they have certain values of life that we should, grant them.
Yeah, that's an interesting point for people that don't know, that you were a couple of years ago documenting a lot of the refugee crisis across Europe, and yeah, it's interesting that you make that link, and it actually makes like perfect sense now.
Yeah.
Why you're taking on these new projects.
Yeah, I mean, I really see it as an evolution, and I remember going into refugee camps in Greece and in Calais, and my last report on the refugee situation was in May, almost a year ago, and I was in Bosnia. When now they're trying to go through Bosnia to reach Europe, and I just remember thinking, like, my last trip in Bosnia, I went into this. It was basically this abandoned factory that they placed all the refugees, and you would have never known that they would have been there. No one knows. I just went there because I was with an organization and they were delivering goods. And at the entrance, of course, there were security guards, and we were able to come in, and they said no photos. And their excuse was because they were minors. They just didn't want to show what was happening inside. And I was able to like hide my camera, and then, well, they were busy with the guy that was giving a tour to the organization. I was able to sneak off. So you published that story.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was such an interesting turning point, because I was really at the end of documenting refugees for 5 years. And I was doing this big retrospective show in Austria. And I just remember this scene, like everybody was so weak waiting for food. They had food serving once a day, and everybody was in line in this dark place, this factory hall with nothing, just in containers, the bare minimum. And everybody was sitting like this. And I just thought, oh my God, this is just like animals, just like the way that we treat animals in farms. And shortly after that, the guy that was curating my work, he was vegan, and he started telling me about the way that they treat cows in the dairy industry, how they were being separated from their mothers, how we put them in solitary confinement in the dark, all these babies. And I didn't know at first. I thought I was a vegetarian for 8 years, and I thought that eating cheese was no big deal. But then when I saw that, and so that made me want to investigate, and I really saw the evolution. So for me, it's like I really made a direct connection, and I just thought, why is it that we treat refugees that way? And essentially it's because we feel like they're not part of the same culture as us, and we feel that they're different from us. So therefore we're frightened, and this is a way of pushing it back because we're scared and we think that they're different. Well, it's really the same thing with animals. I mean, animals, they're not human beings. They're not humans like we are, but they are animals and they are beings, and they look very much different from us. So we feel like there's differences. And so we feel entitled to treat them that way because of that difference, just like we do with the refugees. And I thought, for a long time, oh, we have to treat humans right before we treat animal rights. Like, I always thought human rights was higher than animal rights. But when I started to realize is that it's actually the same thing. It's the same kind of discrimination, just in a different form. So maybe if we start to respect beings that were much different from us, animals, and we have that basic value of life, which is, sentience, then maybe we would start to respect each other better. So that's really how this work started.
Like, does it, well, clearly from that, I mean, like I was saying, oh, it's great that you show this side of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not this side of stuff. Like, that's me coming from a place of ignorance there straight away. Of
Right.
like, it's not like, oh, Clement's showing like the worst of it. No, it's just you're showing it.
No.
And No, I hadn't thought that. I'd looked at your stuff and thought that's really bad, and I'm sure it happens in a lot of places.
Yeah.
But like, it can't be like common. Like, he's taking photos of this because he's been like, "Whoa, this is really bad." But
No, no, I mean, like, I don't have, I started this work with just following activists, and activists don't have this thing where like, oh, we know this bad farm. Of course, they know farms are much worse than others, but what I'm showing is quite standard welfare and standard practice. You can come with me on a night. I can take you in the car. We look on Google Map. We map some farms, random farms. I can tell you that they're all the same. And that's what's so crazy about it, because when was such a big eye opener for me, and I was like, everybody's got to know this. But then when you try to reach out to people and show these things, you always have the same reaction. Oh no, you're just trying to push your views and you're just trying to show the extreme stuff. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just trying to make you more conscious. This is what I saw all the time. Like, this is, I can go to any farm and it's like this.
are
So
there certain farms that are like you, almost like certainly have been proven to be like very high standards? Because clearly
right.
this what's it, red tractor or whatever it's called,
Yeah, right.
is
Factor
just
not
like,
PCA
yeah,
approved.
it's just like, there, have it, like, go on. You know what I mean? Like, is
Yeah.
there another distinction of like farms that have really tried to be above that, or is
I mean,
there?
I've been to one farm that didn't seem so bad. The farm was by the house, and the cows were inside, and everything was quite clean. So that was quite of a good farm. But at the end of the day, like, we also have to remember that these cows, I mean, they will go to slaughter. I mean, we would kill them like really early on. So like, also the question is not just, I think for me, it's like I'm past that point of thinking how can we raise animals ethically so we could eat them. It's much more of a question like, should we at all eat them and kill them? Don't they have a right of life if we don't have to, if it's not a need? And now we know that it's not a need. It's just a habit and culture that we have, thinking that we can't survive without these products, but we can. I mean, it's scientifically proven. It's just about turning around and make a major self change. So the idea of welfare is nice, of course. It's encouraging, of course. Like, if you give a cage, if you have a cage that's really tight, and then you give welfare passes and you give like 2 more centimeters, of course that's an improvement. But you still, at the end, you're still commodifying animals. You're still using them. You're still killing them, and you're still taking from them when it's not unnecessary. You know what I mean? So for me, it's more like I want to push the question of why shouldn't we give right to animals, and actually a bigger question is, why should we keep breeding on animals if it's just for the suffering? And the solution would be, of course, I'm not saying, like, we're not saying leave them out in the field, because that's usually what do you want to do with these animals? Leave them out? What are we going to do? We're breeding like 70 billion animals a year just on land. And the idea is just not to breed them, because they're not supposed to be here in the first place. They're commodification of wild animals. And
Yeah,
that's,
that's why I wanted to ask you another thing actually. What do people challenge you with the most? Like, what do people come to you and say? What, like you just said, oh well, what about this? Where do we put them all? Like, are
yeah,
there other things?
yeah, definitely. So one of the things is we've always done that. We've survived on, that's how we evolved. Uh,
Mm.
and that's how we got,
Yeah, yeah.
so
Mm.
the thing about that is, yes, it's true, at some point we ate meat, but if you look at different cultures, not, first off, in the past, not everyone ate animals.
Yeah.
And when they did hunt, it was a necessity out of survival. But if we actually look at a lot of tribes, like 70% of their diet were plants, and sometime when they really needed something, they hunted. But that was a survival situation. We're not in that situation anymore. And where the situation, if you do any kind of social injustice, we all go from it. I mean, people don't like to use this reference because they don't think we should compare animals to what happened in humans in history. But like, if you look at the slavery, we took African people for slaves, and for a long time we considered them animals. And we evolved past that. Of course, we still have racism and discrimination, but we made a huge effort. So why shouldn't we extend that to animals? The question is that, what is it about animals that give us the right to kill them and eat them? What is it about them? That's really the biggest question. And if you actually sit down and think about it, there's no logical answer. Because if you start to say, is it cognitive capabilities? It doesn't align with your ethics, because then you would say, well, if a person is mentally challenged, should I put down, kill that person? No, you wouldn't. So actually, we don't really know why. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I agree. And from this, do you kind of fear that we just talked about at the start, how this is going to be a big changing point in history?
Mm.
Do you fear that it's not going to be a changing point for animal rights? Because it doesn't feel high on the agenda from what I've heard in my circles of communication.
It's I think it could be a turning point for the animal rights movement. I think if people start to, because we have to look at where COVID-19 originated. I mean, this originated from a market in China with having different animals around, right? So this disease does come from animals. But the thing is the contact of humans with animals in those contexts. So clearly there's a real strong link here. But I think we're really good in culture and in society and kind of like dividing things and finding reasons. So now we're separating this. Oh, of course, this happens in China because they have a wet market and they just put all kinds of wild animals like this and they kill them without any sanitation. So of course this would happen. But here, I mean, here in the West, you've seen my pictures. I mean, animals are eating each other inside farms because they're so traumatized by the way that we treat them and the way that they behaved, and there are diseases outbreaks all the time. We're just really better at containing them. But it's eating meat is not healthy for anyone. We know that. There's tons of research. Diabetes, heart attacks, cholesterol. Even now, there's a lot of scientists that says that animal products leads to cancer cells. So I think that if people start to really look at the root of the problem, not just selectively where it happened, then we can start to understand maybe this. It's a bit of a spiritual thing too, in a way, because there's kind of a karmic approach that the way that we're treating animals is getting back to us and within a virus. So it's a bigger thing. It's a bigger thing to really consider, and it's just we're really killing each other because we're killing others. So, and there's no necessity for that. So that's really the question. Like, what justifies that? What is it that we can keep on doing that? If it's unhealthy for us, if it's killing trillions of animals a year, if it's bad for the environment, what is the justification? The justification can only be we're used to it, culture and habit. And does that outweigh all these problems?
Yeah, I had a really good lecturer at university, and I don't know about other people, but his first lecture, so it was on climate change and the media.
Yeah.
And he made me personally feel kind of like silly. And I don't know how it affected the rest of the room, but he started off by showing us, without giving context, he showed us all these adverts and stuff about of smoking and lobbying of government officials about smoking. And we were all, laughing at these things like, how can this exist?
Yeah, yeah.
How is this a thing? And I couldn't help but think, like, in, 30, 40 years, so these were for about 50 years ago, so 50 years from now, could it be that these lecture is happening at the same university and they're showing the same thing, but it's like meat and stuff like that, and all these kids are laughing? Like, how can you be so stupid?
Precisely. I mean, just like this Arla had, you know about Arla, right? The dairy company. I mean, now they have this ad in town where they just have this like woman touching the haze, and she looks so hip, and she has an iPad, and she looks like this ecological farmer. I mean, it's just I can just see that they would have hired a guy like me to do the photo shoot and take a model and like had a stylist.
Yeah, well, it's like in those, it's like smoking's good for you. They show like a big handsome man, and he's like smoking, and he's like riding a horse or something, and like they're like, yeah, great, and then like you think, how is that real? But now, like if when it all changes, and with animal rights and the consumption of animals as food, people will be laughing at it in the same way, I think.
Yeah. I think the term vegan is controversial, and I think that when people hear veganism, it kind of turns them off, because because of what we're trying to show is so extreme that people have defense to it because it's very personal also. But I think the thing to remember is that I used to eat meat. I used to love like eating pork. I used to eat cheese all the time. It's just that I realized what was happening, and I just became really honest with myself and said, this doesn't justify me on. And of course, that wasn't just an overnight progress. I was vegetarian for years, and I laid off the dairy little by little, and then it just kind of happened. So it's not being vegan for being vegan. It's not an ideology or anything like that. It's just more like conscious choice. And I think that's, I'd like a future where we just get rid of that term vegan, like just get rid of it, like just make it normal. You know what I
It's
mean?
definitely a trigger word. It's definitely like
Yeah,
a buzzword, and it's particularly for the older generation.
yeah,
They'll roll their eyes. They'll be like, "Oh,
mm,
vegan." This like
mm, mm.
pushing like they think more of like it from a cultural perspective rather than
Right,
what it actually is. And I
right.
think what you're saying is a lot of um, people expect, oh, vegans are going to make us just throw away all our meat and all this. And it's
Mm,
like, no, these people went, most of them went through this process as well. They don't expect you to one day to be
no,
like, no,
no,
done, because
no.
that's hard for any habit in life.
Right,
You know,
right.
you watch too much TV, you eat too many biscuits, like
Yeah, yeah.
you
No, I get
smoke,
it.
like
And it's super hard to also be 100% ethical in those senses because like even us as vegans, we try to reduce our consumption, but like I'm sure there are things that I do every day that are still affecting animals because we live in a society where animal products are everywhere. And so it's really, but the point is just not to try to live up to ideology. The point is just to try to lower your impact as much as possible
yeah, yeah, definitely,
and reduce suffering, really.
Yeah, the society is so geared towards these things. Like, uh, I heard Marco Pierre White say in a talk once. He was saying, you know, what's to stop a working class family from going and buying a chicken to have their roast dinner
Mm,
because they don't have enough money and there's cheap meat and that's their way of, you know,
mm,
not spending a lot of money and enjoying that experience
mm.
because the culture around it kind of forced you into that. It's like when that horse meat scandal in the UK. Well, it probably
Right.
wasn't just in the UK. In Europe, these were cheap products
Mm,
that people were forced to buy that
right.
contained these like horse meat and all these
Yeah.
other stuff.
Yeah.
So there needs to be a shift from above because a lot of people are too focused on paychecks,
Yeah.
bills, their children, to
Yeah.
then make these change. You know, all that pressure. Then you're like, "What? We have to be vegan now as well." But the food I buy is cheap. You
Yeah.
know, it's cheap.
I mean, I think there's a lot of misconception about that because like all this that you talked about like what other things come up, and one of the things that always come up is like being vegan is inaccessible and
Yeah.
is unaffordable. So if you take a lower class family and you said they need to buy it, I was talking to Duncan and we're talking about vegan cheese, and he said, "Oh, vegan cheese is like vegan cheese is getting really good now." And I said, "Yeah." So I said, like, what's the reason of wanting to keep buying dairy cheese? And he said to me, well, some people will look at the price difference. And I'm like, well, like you can get vegan cheese for £2, £2.50. I don't think that's much of a big deal. It's like, yeah, but you have to know that some people will actually get cheese for 10 pence.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, yeah, but that's really shit cheese. But I
Mm,
mean, I
yeah.
get I get it. But the thing is that it's also like it's more like being vegan. You don't have to have these things. You don't have to have the vegan cheese. You don't have to have the meat substitutes. It's you only want that because we're used to eating certain animal products. Me as a vegan, I pretty much eat like very basic now. I mean, I eat a lot of beans, lentils, rice, whole wheat pasta. I buy broccoli, spinach. These are not expensive food. And sweet potatoes, oatmeal every morning,
Who
super
doesn't
cheap.
like sweet potatoes? Sweet potatoes.
Yeah. So I mean, like I've kind of also like reprogrammed myself into eating more healthier and more simpler, and not always wanting like this kind of junk food. And actually now it's kind of interesting because it's almost been a year, and I don't go for. I mean, I bought vegan ice cream and it's been in the freezer for like 2 weeks now, and I had a box
Whereas
of
normally you
yeah,
just
and I
yeah
just had two in the last 2 weeks, like one once a week, and something like here I have vegan chocolate, and I bought this about 2 weeks ago, and I just finished the pack. So then you start to really question, like, fuck, these products are actually really addictive, and we're used to a certain chemical response. But then when you kind of reprogram yourself and go to more simpler foods, you realize it's not that hard, and you realize that it's quite affordable. And a vegan lifestyle can be super cheap. It can be the cheapest thing ever. I mean, like I said, beans, lentils. I mean, these are like have high protein. You put a frozen spinach, frozen peas. You get everything.
I think that's been broken. The health thing,
Yeah.
the protein thing. I think people are finally starting to be like, okay, you can, because it's true. Like a lot of athletes who need the best kinds of proteins and stuff have all said, you know, we are vegan. So I think that's actually probably the first one, because I remember a lot of people. I mean, it's not gone, but I remember a lot of people making that argument. Like, how are you supposed to? You know, you need the meat to be big muscles. I think that's broken. And I hope that it continues to change. I mean, like, you know, it's kind of hypocritical me saying that and not doing it, because I'll be honest, I'm lazy. You know, like the Buddhist monk was saying, you know, you got to be honest with yourself in this period. You know, there's a time where you be brutally honest. And if I'm brutally honest with myself, I'm very happy to publish your work and help you through all these means. But being brutally honest, I won't back it up with my own actions. And these are the things that I hope will come in my life in this period. And for other people.
I think you can be conscious of it, and for a long time you can put it out of your mind because you focus on different things, and this is not maybe a priority to you. I mean, I remember when I was a vegetarian, there was a girl that came up to me, and she was vegan, and she gave me a pamphlet, and she started talking to me, and she's like, "Oh, you're vegetarian?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh, so what are you still eating?" And I'm like, "I love cheese. I love cheese so much, I can never give it up." And she's like, "Yeah, cheese is always the last thing." And I knew she was right deep down, you know. I knew that, and I knew myself, one day I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
But I didn't, you know. I went on 2 years before I did, and just one day, it just happened. So I think like just being aware of it already, just kind of, I don't know. At some point, it's hard to say. Like, it's either you're ready or not. And I think that in terms of activism, many people feel forced when we push this agenda, but it's not being forced. It's more like we want people to make their own realization. So we put information out there. That's why I do this documentary work, you know, hoping that people will start pondering over this. Because if not, you're never going to ponder over it, and you're always going to brush it off. But as soon as it enters your mind, then I think, and that's why photography is so powerful, because an image always allows the viewer to reflect over it.
Yeah, definitely. We'll leave it there. Like I said, we'll help share some stuff. From this, and I think we'll probably post it in a couple of days, because we got a couple queued up. But sure. Clement, thank you so much for
sure.
chatting to me.
My pleasure.
If you need anything or you want to talk again, I'm always here.
Yeah, that's great.
And also, if you have anyone else that you think would be really good to talk to, again, I'm here.
Maybe my friend Nicholas. I just thought of him. You know, Duncan knows him. He works on video games, so he's been making a video game inside quarantine. And actually, for him, it's kind of interesting, because he was so distracted with the outside world that he was getting annoyed, because he just wanted to focus on the game. So that could be kind of, and he's a painter also. He makes crazy paintings, and he's quite known in the video game world, and he's an artist. So maybe you would be interested in talking to him.
That sounds so interesting. Email me or message me. And
I'll call him, and then I'll put him in touch with. I'll put you guys in touch.
All right. Thank you so much.
Let me know if you need any material, photos, or anything else. I can send things to you.
Yeah, I will do. Thank you. Stay well. And eat some more of that ice cream.
Yeah.
Enjoy yourself.
That's good. All right. Super nice.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.